Welcome back to my channel. Everything is sharp, cold, hungry, or on fire. Sometimes all at once you've survived the night barely, and only because nothing hungry stumbled into your cave while you were snoring like a mammoth with sinus problems. The good news, you're alive. The bad news, you're in the Stone Age. Your bed is a rock, not like a firm mattress kind of rock, a literal slab of nature that's done nothing to accommodate your spine. If you're lucky, there's a layer of fur between you and hypothermia, probably from some unfortunate animal you didn't kill but are now wearing. Like you did. It still smells like regret. You try to sit up, but your joints crack loud enough to wake a saber-toothed tiger, or at least earn a disapproving grunt from the person squatting next to you, sharpening a bone knife and looking very done with your existence. The air is cold, not charming winter walk. Cold, I can see my breath and maybe part of my soul cold. There is no fire, just the smoldering remains of what might have once been warmth, now reduced to smoke, ash and shame outside. The sun hasn't even risen yet, probably because it doesn't want to. The tribe is already awake, moving around. Like this is normal. Like waking up before dawn to gather rocks and not die is a totally reasonable lifestyle. You, on the other hand, look like someone dropped a confused poet into a survival contest. You have no idea what you're supposed to do. And frankly, neither does anyone else, but they're better at pretending you stretch bad idea. You're sore in places you didn't know existed. Your shoulder clicks, your back spasms, and your hips issue a formal protest. There is no breakfast waiting, no gentle conversation, no coffee, just the cold realization that if you don't immediately start doing something useful, anything, you might get left behind, or worse, eaten after you die for convenience, and that's how your morning begins. You're hungry. Not just I could eat hungry. This is the kind of hunger where your stomach starts having conversations with itself, and none of them are friendly. You look around expecting maybe a handful of berries or even a sad strip of dried meat. There is nothing. Breakfast in the Stone Age is not a guaranteed daily ritual. It is a hypothetical, a hope, a whispered prayer to an uncaring sky god who may or may not be a large rock with a face someone carved in during a fever dream. If you want to eat, you have to earn it. That means digging, scraping, scavenging, or sprinting after something faster than you, and hoping it's dumber. Spoiler, it isn't everything you want to eat either. Has legs or thorns, and in both cases it uses them against you. You watch as a wiry man on a route that looks like something you'd avoid even touching. He offers you a piece. It tastes like wet wood that lost a bet, but it fills your mouth, and more importantly, it doesn't actively try to kill you. A rare win. Someone else holds up a dead bird, like they just discovered gold. It's about the size of your hand, mostly feathers and nerves. They start plucking it with the efficiency of someone who's done this a lot, which is comforting until you realize they're keeping the whole thing, apparently catching food. Means you get to eat it. What a concept you consider foraging. After all, how hard could it be to spot something edible vary? It turns out every fruit looks either suspiciously bright or aggressively bland. You pluck something that looks vaguely like a plum. A woman slaps it out of your hand before you can taste it. She doesn't say anything, just gives you a look that says, "I've seen people drop dead faster than that." So you settle for chewing on a piece of old root and pretending it's enough. It isn't. Your stomach isn't fooled. It begins planning your betrayal. You're fasting permanently. If you're not careful, you want to be helpful. That's cute. The tribe is already busy. Someone's sharpening a flint blade. Someone else is weaving sinew into something that might be a net or a trap or just a creative way to make you feel unskilled. You pick up a rock, you stare at it. It stares back. Congratulations, you're bonding with a rock. Tools are not decorations here. They're the reason anyone has teeth left. They cut, scrape, smash, dig, and occasionally get used to settle arguments. And unless you've spent years figuring out which stone breaks into blades and which one just breaks your thumb, you're about as useful as a damp leaf. You try to copy what the others are doing. A man smacks 2 stones together and produces a razor-sharp edge in 3 swings. You try the same. The rock splits unevenly and flings a shard directly into your face. You're bleeding now, but hey, you've successfully recreated the experience of early surgery. A woman is making cord from strips of hide. She does it with the efficiency of someone who's been doing this since her literal infancy. You attempt the same. The hide slips, coils, and somehow ties your fingers together. You've invented Stone Age handcuffs. That's something no one explains anything. They don't need. To tools are so. Someone takes pity and hands you a half-finished scraper, not out of kindness, but because watching you fail is slowing everyone down. You nod gratefully and then hold it the wrong way. They shake their head and go back to work. It's getting colder again, which is impressive, considering you didn't think colder was still an option. Your fingers are stiff, your nose has stopped issuing temperature updates, and your feet are starting to feel like someone else's problem. You decide it's time to make fire after all. How hard can it be? You've seen it done in drawings and dreams. Step 1. Gather dry wood. You don't find dry wood. Everything's damp, stubborn, and covered in something that may or may not be alive. You pick the least suspicious bundle and hope for the best. Step 2. Friction. You rub sticks together. Nothing happens. You rub harder. Still nothing eventually. You create heat, then smoke, and then more smoke. It's just enough to burn your eyes and give you false hope. Then the wind shows up and mocks your efforts by blowing it all away. You keep going by now. Your hands are blistered, your arms ache, and your confidence has quietly left the camp without saying goodbye. You glance over. One of the elders has a fire going already. No ceremony, no drama, just a small, perfect flame, nestled in a pile of dry moss. Like it was born there. You look back at your pile. It looks like it's been cursed. Eventually someone notices. They walk over, silently, take your kindling, rearrange it with the efficiency of a bored god, and strike 2 rocks together with a flint, edge, spark, smoke flame done. They hand it to you without a word and walk off before you can say thank you or teach me your dark magic. You stare at the fire now burning in your pile. You pretend it was your idea. No one believes you. Fire is everything. Warmth, light, safety, cooked food, and the only reason predators haven't dragged you off into the night. But it's not easy. It never was. Every flame is a battle, and you just lost 5 of them in a row. You're thirsty. Deep, dry mouth. Like sandpaper. Thirsty. The kind of thirsty that makes you consider licking moss or chewing bark just to feel something wet. Luckily, there's a stream nearby. You stumble toward it like a man possessed. Finally, something easy. You kneel, cup your hands and scoop up a glorious handful of crystal clear. Our water you drink, and then you pause. That water had a taste, not a flavor, a message. It whispered something metallic and vaguely threatening. A few seconds later, your stomach replies with a gurgle that sounds like it's filing a complaint. Here's the thing. In the Stone Age, water is not clean or filtered. It's not lovingly piped from snowmelt through a mountain spring. It's a wild, communal soup. Animals drink from it. People bathe in it. Sometimes things die in it. Sometimes people drink it after things die in it. There is no quality control. There is only risk. You look around for signs, any sign that this water is safe. No one else is drinking. That might be a clue. One of the elders is boiling something over a fire. Smart, you didn't do that. You drank straight from the source like it owed you something. A small child walks by and hands you a hollowed-out gourd of water. It's warm, smells faintly like dirt, and still looks safer than whatever just settled in your lower intestine. But there's no other option. You're in the middle of a society that hasn't discovered plumbing filtration or even consistent advice on which puddles won't end your week. Thirst is constant, and water is everywhere, just inconveniently weaponized. You hear a story half-whispered about a man who drank from the wrong bend in the river and didn't make it to morning. You nod slowly, trying to commit the story to memory, while also pretending you didn't just do the exact same thing. Now it's a waiting game. Will you hydrate and feel better? Or are you about to spend the next 12 hours regretting your entire tongue's decision-making process? You've decided to join the hunt. Bold, brave, doomed. You're handed a spear. It's heavy, uneven, and smells like the last thing it was jammed into, probably something with tusks. The others check their gear calmly, like they're just going out to pick up groceries. If groceries actively tried to impale you, you follow the group into the woods. The air is quiet, too quiet. You assume this is good. It's not. The silence means every animal within a mile knows you're here and has decided it doesn't want to be. Eventually, someone spots something, a wild boar. It's massive. It looks like it. Bench presses logs for fun. You raise your spear. Your hand is shaking. Your confidence is even shakier. The boar looks up. You freeze, the boar doesn't it? Charges, you run. That's it. That's your strategy. You sprint through the trees, trip over a root, and eat dirt. Not a metaphor, actual dirt. It tastes as inspiring as your performance behind you. The real hunters are moving with precision. One darts, left another flanks. From the side spears fly, the ball goes down the tribe. Cheers. You are still on the ground rethinking your entire identity. They drag the carcass back to camp. It takes 4 people and a lot of grunting. You limp behind them, trying to look like you helped. You didn't back at the fire. They butcher the animal with stone knives and practiced hands. You get handed a strip of raw meat. You chew it, like someone trying to understand how flavor works. It's chewy, slightly warm, and weirdly emotional. This was supposed to be your moment, your heroic breakthrough. But the truth is, in the Stone Age, hunting is not cinematic. It's exhausting. It's dangerous. And most of the time, you don't get the animal. The animal gets you. You've learned something important today. You are not the apex predator. You're the guy who clogs up the hunting party and almost gets gored to death by an angry pig. After almost getting trampled to death by an overgrown pork missile, you decide to try something safer. Plants. How hard could foraging be? You've seen leaves. You've even touched a mushroom. Once you're basically an herbalist, you head out with a small woven pouch and boundless optimism. 2 things that historically get people killed within minutes. You found something that looks promising, a berry bush. The berries are small, shiny, and vividly colored, which is either a sign of nutrition or a blaring biological warning siren. You grab one, just as you're about to pop it into your mouth. A nearby woman swats your hand away, like she's saving your life. Which, to be fair, she is. No one explains anything. They don't have to. You're supposed to know what's edible and what's fatal, and if you don't, well, the tribe gets 1 story richer. You move on. Dig up a few tubers. Try to act like you know what you're doing. You even sniff a mushroom with scholarly curiosity before tossing it, remembering that fungi in this world are less side dish and more hallucinate into the void before dying under a fern. A man shows you something that looks like a shriveled brown carrot. He nods. You nod back as if you knew this plant personally. You chew a piece. It tastes like soil and regret, but you're not dead yet, which qualifies as success. The truth is, plants are the real gatekeepers of survival. They don't run. They don't bite. They just sit there quietly waiting for you to make a mistake. One bite of the wrong leaf, and it's a race between vomiting and your nervous system shutting down. And even the edible ones are work. Some roots need boiling. Some leaves need drying. Some seeds will kill you if you forget to roast them first. There are no shortcuts. Only symptoms by the time you return to camp. You've gathered 2 vaguely safe tubers, a few edible flowers, and a newfound respect for herbal knowledge you absolutely do not possess. Let's talk about what you're wearing, or rather, what you've been wrapped in like a poorly packed meatloaf. Your outfit consists of animal hides that were scraped clean with a rock dried over smoke and stitched together with a technique best described as functional but vaguely insulting. It doesn't fit. It doesn't breathe. It smells like something that was recently alive and still might be. There are no sleeves, just holes where your arms are expected to exit. The garment itself is stiff in places it shouldn't be, loose in places it really shouldn't be, and generally designed by someone whose only fashion goal was, "Don't die today." You tug at the edges, trying to adjust it. Bad idea. The seams made of dried sinew respond by digging deeper into your skin. Now you're chafing. Congratulations in the Stone Age clothing. Comes with side effects. Nearby, a woman is softening a new hide by chewing it. Yes, chewing it. This is considered normal. You briefly wonder how desperate someone had to be to discover that teeth were a viable tailoring tool. You try to look dignified. It's hard, your fur tunic flaps weirdly when you move. Your boots are 2 mismatched scraps tied together with strips of gut, and your inner thighs are now at war with your outer thighs. Over territory. Then there's the temperature. Somehow your hide outfit manages to be too warm and too cold. At the same time, the fur traps heat around your torso, making you sweat while your limbs dangle freely in the wind like sacrifices to the frost. Gods, and don't even ask about rain. Hides get wet. Wet hides get heavy. And suddenly, you're walking around wrapped in a soggy animal sponge that slowly reanimates as it drips down your back. Meanwhile, the rest of the tribe looks perfectly at ease in their handmade gear. Their clothes move with them. Yours moves against you, like it resents being worn by someone this incompetent. You think the tribe likes you. That's adorable. You've been here a day, maybe 2. You haven't actively endangered anyone yet, and you're trying your best, which in Stone Age terms still ranks just below dead weight and just above animal bait. Nobody says it out loud. Of course, that would be effort. But the signs are there. When the group sits around the fire, they sit slightly closer to each other, leaving you a generous 4-foot buffer zone. Like you're contagious, which, considering you drank from the wrong stream, might be accurate social status. Here is based on one simple metric: usefulness. Can you hunt? Can you gather? Can you not scream when insects crawl up your leg? No. Then congratulations. You're not part of the inner circle. You're more of a temporary guest, a very flammable one. You try to contribute. You offer a route. It's the wrong route. You try to help Tanner hide. You poke a hole straight through it. Someone hands you a bundle of sticks and gestures vaguely toward the fire. You stand there holding it like you're about to invent performance art. they stop asking you to help. At one point, a child offers you a sharp rock. You assume it's a gift. It isn't. It's a test. You fail it by holding the blade upside down and bleeding onto your own foot. No one reacts. That's the worst part. No one mocks you. They just move on like nature, like weather. You're not worth getting angry about yet. You overhear someone grunt in your direction. It's a tone you don't understand, but you feel it in your bones, not threatening, not friendly, just observational. The same way, someone might comment on a log that's not burning properly. You are the log, and you start to wonder if the wolves would be a more forgiving audience. There's no lantern, no torch, no warm glow from a bedside table lamp. The sun drops behind the horizon like a guillotine, and just like that, the world turns black. Not dim, not cozy black. The fire crackles, casting a flickering circle of light that somehow makes everything just visible enough to be more terrifying. Trees rustle in the distance. Something howls. It's either a wolf or something that eats wolves either way. It knows where you are. It's been waiting for you to fall asleep. You scoop closer to the fire. No one joins you. Most of the tribe is already curled up together in a pile of hides, forming a warm collective mass of mutual trust and shared body heat. You're not invited. You're the one who sneezed during the hunting party and scared off a deer. You get the cold side of the cave. Sleep doesn't come easy. Every sound outside the fire's glow sounds like it has an agenda. A twig snaps. You sit up a branch. Kicks. You stop breathing. Something snorts. Or maybe exhales from behind the rock wall. You make peace with your gods. You don't know their names, but you figure they'll understand. Even the stars look like they're judging you beautiful. Yes, but useless. You can't eat them, can't wear them, and they won't scare off whatever. Just move near the cave entrance. You close your eyes, you open them again. Almost immediately, your brain reminds you that you're wrapped in a damp fur coat and lying on a slab of uneven earth, surrounded by people who may or may not notice if you get dragged away in the night. And here's the thing. If something does eat you, it won't be out of malice. It'll be out of efficiency. You're slow. You're weak. And judging by the way you failed to cook that root earlier, you probably smell like panic. You wake up sore stiff and somehow colder than when you fell asleep. Which shouldn't be possible, but the Stone Age enjoys new forms of suffering. Your fur wrap has shifted in the night, offering little more than emotional support. Your ankle feels like it lost a fight with a rock, and there's a new bite on your arm. Could be a bug, could be a rodent. Honestly, you're just glad. Something found you useful outside the cave. The tribe is already up again. You don't know when they sleep. Maybe they don't. Maybe exhaustion is just something they wrestle into. Submission, like everything else in their lives. You hobble toward the fire pit, hoping for something warm. There isn't. The ashes are cold. The fire went out sometime during the night. A group decision, apparently, that didn't involve consulting you or your fingers, which are now numb enough to qualify as decorative. You attempt to rejoin the group. Someone hands you a stick. No instructions. No explanation. You assume it's for poking something. Maybe a task. Maybe self-defense. Maybe they're just testing to see what you'll do with it. You fail. Obviously, every movement hurts your muscles, ache from doing things they weren't designed for. Namely survival. Your shoulders scream from carrying too little too wrong. Your knees feel like someone filled them with gravel. Your pride somewhere back near the pile of uncooked tubers you tripped over. Yesterday, the others are already organizing. Someone's reinforcing the shelter wall with bones. Another's gutting something with terrifying ease. You try to help again and manage to trip over a child's toy, which is literally just a small rock with a face on it. The child stares at you like you've insulted his ancestors. You probably have no one tells you what to do. That's not how things work here. You're expected to know. And if you don't, you're expected to figure it out. Without asking stupid questions. Supposed to be covered in blood already? At first you think it's raining, it isn't. It's starting to rain, which is worse, because now you know the full downpour is coming and you're not ready. No one's ever ready. Even the people who've lived here their entire lives glance up and frown, like the sky just made a rude joke. You shuffle over to the edge of the shelter being a generous word, for some branches tied together with gut strings in the hope that trees are waterproof spoiler. They're not. The wind picks up. It cuts through your hide clothing, like you're wearing a damp napkin. Your boots, which are just scraps of animal skin tied around your feet, begin soaking through immediately. Your toes squish. You pretend not to notice the rain begins in earnest, cold fat drops that feel less like water and more like punishment. Everything is suddenly slick. The fire sputters, the walls cock. The smell of wet fur fills the air like an apology. No one wants to hear you duck into the cave hoping for relief. It's slightly better. Slightly. The roof leaks in 3 different places, and the floor is now mud. You watch a centipede confidently stroll across your sleeping area. It seems more prepared for this life than you are. The others are already adjusting someone's moving firewood inside, and others hanging hides to dry near the smoke. You try to help and knock over a stack of tools. A loud clatter follows. So do the stairs. You are now both wet and in the way. Later, someone tosses you a half-dry pelt to wear. You drape it around yourself like a soggy emperor and try not to look too grateful. It helps not much, but a little. You sit down, dripping quietly into a puddle, while the storm howls outside like it has a personal vendetta against your comfort. It starts with a cough. Nothing dramatic, just a little scratch in the throat. You try to ignore it by mid-morning. You're wheezing like a dying goat, and your nose has decided to self-destruct. Your eyes are watering. Your skin feels warm. Not cozy, warm infection. Warm. You announce this to no one, because no one is going to do anything about it. You have officially entered the medical care phase of the Stone Age. Congratulations. There are no doctors, no clinics, no herbs arranged neatly on a wooden shelf by someone named Fern. Instead, an elder takes one look at you, grunts, and hands you a wad of crushed leaves. You chew them. It tastes like moldy spinach, marinated in old sweat. You nod solemnly, as if it's helping. It isn't. Your fever worsens. Someone suggests a steam treatment. This involves sitting in a hole next to heated rocks while they pour water over them. You cough, sweat, and contemplate death. It's like a sauna designed by someone who's only ever heard of saunas from hallucinations. At some point, someone smears a mixture of mud herbs and possibly animal fat onto your chest for drawing out the spirits. Apparently you don't ask questions. You're too busy vibrating from chills. Pain. There's no pain relief. You get a stick to bite on. And a knowing look from the tribe's unofficial healer. A woman with exactly 3 teeth and a permanent scowl. She whispers, something in a language that might just be annoyed, breathing the cure for anything. It seems is either time luck or not dying before it goes away. You try to sleep. Your dreams are strange in one. You're being chased by a squirrel, the size of a bison. In another, your spear is talking. You wake up gasping in a puddle of your own sweat and leaf fragments by the end of the day. You're not better, but you're not worse either, which in Stone Age terms means you might survive or you might just be entering phase 2, bone pain. You accidentally bumped someone today, not hard, just a little shoulder graze on your way to sit by the fire. They looked at you like you just challenged them to a duel. You stammered an apology. They didn't answer. They simply stood up, squared their shoulders, and stared at you until your soul left your body through your socks. It turns out conflict resolution in the Stone Age is not based on open dialogue and active listening. It's more of a, let's see who survives this disagreement kind of culture. There's no concept of de-escalation. No one is diffusing the tension with a calming voice or a gentle reminder that we're all part of a team. Instead, someone casually sharpens a stick nearby, not because of your conflict, just as a general lifestyle choice. But still, the message is clear. Don't push your luck. Disputes are settled through stares, silence, or sudden acts of deeply personal violence. If it escalates, there are options: a fight, an insult ritual, or just straight-up banishment into the woods where the leopards are always hiring. You try to smooth things over by offering a smoked fish. It's not accepted, not because of the gesture, but because the fish is overcooked. And now you've offended someone's grandmother who invented that recipe 8 generations ago. Eventually, a tribal elder mutters something and breaks a small stick in half. This is symbolic. You don't know of what, but the man you bumped grunts and walks away. Apparently, you're not worth murdering. Yet later, someone pats you on the back, either in reassurance or to check how many ribs you still have. You're not sure what you've learned is that in the Stone Age, maintaining peace takes real skill. A wrong glance, an unfair share of meat, or breathing too loud during sleep can spark consequences you can't talk your way out of. There's no agree to disagree. There's just agree or dig a hole in modern times. You'd leave a 1-star review here. You leave the tribe, or they leave you. Well, you did it. Sort of. You've made it through a full Stone Age day, though. Made it might be a stretch. You're alive, yes, but not exactly thriving. Your clothes are damp. Your pride is shredded. Your stomach hasn't forgiven you. And every muscle in your body has filed a formal complaint. But technically, you're still breathing, which here qualifies as success. The tribe hasn't exiled you. That may be an oversight, or maybe they've silently agreed you're too entertaining to get rid of. Just yet, after all, watching you attempt to climb that tree for berries. Actually, wasps did provide the entire group with 6 minutes of bonding as night falls. Again, you sit near the fire. Not close, but closer than yesterday. You're beginning to understand the rhythm of this world. The quiet mornings, the harsh sun, the constant need to earn everything food. Shelter respect with hands that weren't trained for any of this. No one has explained anything to you, they never do. This is not a world of instructions. It's a world of observation, of imitation, of failing. Until failure teaches you what survival won't. Someone hands you a strip of roasted meat. You nod in thanks. It's tough, salty, and has a hint of fur. You chew it like it's your last meal. It might be. You still don't belong here. Not really. Your brain keeps trying to apply logic from another time, one with microwaves and socks, but slowly, painfully, it's starting to adapt. You now know that fire doesn't make itself. Water is rarely a gift, and roots are trying to kill you. The tribe chats quietly in their own language, one that's more gesture and expression than words you catch. None of it, but you nod anyway. It seems polite. You lie down on your patch of cold earth wrapped in furs that smell like every animal in the forest played tugafor with them. Your body hurts. Your dignity is gone. But for now, nothing is biting you in the Stone Age. That's about as good as it gets. You wouldn't last a day. Technically, you just did, but let's not push our luck with a second one. It began with silence and formality. 2 things that an Edo period, Japan were never as harmless as they seemed. Lord Asano Naganori of Akko, a young daimyo from western Japan, had been summoned to the shogun's palace in Edo to perform a delicate duty: receive and entertain envoys from the Emperor of Kyoto. This was no small task. The court demanded. Precision protocol was everything. And watching over the ceremonies was a man named Kira Yoshinaka, a high-ranking court official, master of rituals, and unofficially a man infamous for expecting bribes. Lord Asano, however, was not one to play those games. He came from a proud samurai lineage. Honor was not a bargaining chip, and perhaps to his own detriment, he had a face that could not pretend to smile. Kira noticed, and Kira resented it over the days that followed. Kira began needling Asano with insults, quiet jabs, sharp corrections, petty humiliations. The courtly halls of Adeto Castle echoed with whispers. Kira had called Asano a country bumpkin, had mocked his manners, had made him wait outside rooms. He was supposed to host. The tension built quietly and painfully, like pressure beneath lacquered wood. And then, on the 21st day of the 3rd month, in the year 1701, it snapped in a hallway of Adeto Castle. Asano drew his short sword and attacked Kira. His blade grazed the older man's face and shoulder, an insult, not a kill, but to draw a weapon inside the shogun's palace that was unforgivable. No matter the provocation, Kira survived. Asano was immediately arrested within hours. The shogunate passed judgment. No investigation. No second chances. Lord Asano was ordered to commit Sukuku ritual suicide by sunset. His lands were confiscated. His retainers were cast out. His family was dishonored. And most cruel of all, Kira remained untouched, unpunished, victorious. But the story didn't end there among Asano's now masterless samurai. His ronin was a man named Oishi Kuranosuke, and while the world moved on, Oishi began to plan quietly, patiently. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about something deeper, something older, a test of Bushido, the way of the warrior. And it had just begun. The death of Lord Asano should have marked the end. His house was abolished. His men disbanded. The shogun had made it clear there would be no vendetta. Kira remained in his estate under the protection of the law. Justice had been rendered swift and cold. But outside the shogun's palace, the code of the samurai told a different story. Oishi Kuranosuke, chief retainer of Asano, didn't weep, he didn't shout. He bowed his head, dispersed the samurai of Akko, and obeyed the decree. Outwardly, he submitted. Inwardly, he waited. The ronin scattered. Some returned to their families. Others took up trades, merchants, monks, even beggars. The world believed they had moved on, that their loyalty had died with their lord. But under the surface, a plan was coiling tighter. Aishi knew that the shogunate was watching. Revenge was a crime, especially when aimed at a man like Kira, who still held rank and favor. Any sign of plotting would mean arrest or worse, execution before the deed could be done. So Oishi played the fool. He moved to Kyoto, drank openly in the streets, gambled in public, took up with courtesans for over a year. He projected the image of a man broken by disgrace, disheveled, drunk, dishonored, the perfect portrait of failure. Meanwhile, his fellow ronin were doing the opposite, in secret letters in dark corners of tea houses and shrines. They stayed in touch. They studied Kira's movements. They measured the layout of his Adeto mansion. They learned the guards' habits, the gates' rhythms, and the pulse of the household. Kira, for his part, relaxed. He had friends in high places and a scar that healed well. His enemies had vanished into the wind. What more could they do? They had no master, no name, and no power. And this was exactly what Oishi wanted him to think, because behind the sake-stained robes and slurred words was a mind sharper than any blade. He wasn't just planning a killing. He was crafting a statement, one that would speak to all of Japan, one that would show the world that Bushido, the true Bushido, was not dead, not yet, and in the frozen heart of winter, when the time was right, that silence would finally shatter by the time snow began to fall over Ado in late 1702-47. Ronin had made their decision. No more waiting, no more watching. The time for vengeance had come. Oishi Kuranosuke gathered his scattered brothers in arms. Some traveled for days to reach Ado. Others had never truly left, but one by one they reassembled, not as wandering men, but as samurai. Once more, not for pay, not for honor restored, but for duty, the kind that lives after death. The plan was precise. Each man had a role. This was not a brawl, it was a performance, and every detail mattered. They forged new weapons, silent and fast. They crafted winter armor, light enough to scale walls, but thick enough to deflect a strike. They even built a fake fire brigade, complete with uniforms to avoid suspicion, if anyone questioned why a group of men was marching through the city at night. Kira's mansion was a fortress. High walls, dozens of guards, multiple gates. But it had been studied for over a year. The layout was memorized, the routines predictable. The servants, indifferent most, had grown lax. Why wouldn't they? The Ronin were gone. Their leader drunk, their cause buried. Aishi made sure his own family was safe. He divorced his wife and sent her and their younger children away. Far from the coming blood, he knew what this would cost. He knew it might not work, and he knew even if it did, they would all be sentenced to death. But the way of Bushido didn't leave room for personal safety. On the 14th night of the 12th month, January 30th, 1703 by the Western calendar, they moved snow-blanketed Adato, muffling footsteps and deadening sound. It was the perfect ally. At 2 a.m., the Ronins split into two teams. One would attack the rear gate, the other the front. A signal would be given when both sides were in position. The mission was simple: seize the house, kill Kira, and disturb as little of the city as possible. No innocence, no unnecessary blood. Justice. Some had waited over a year. Others had spent that year pretending to forget now. With swords drawn and the night watching, forgetting was no longer necessary. Justice would no longer wait. The attack began in silence. No shouting, no wild charges, just coordinated, measured violence beneath the pale winter moon. Aishi's front team breached the main gate with a battering ram, crashing through the heavy doors before the guards even knew they were under siege. Meanwhile, the rear team scaled the walls quietly, dispatching sentries with the practiced efficiency of men who had rehearsed this night 100 times in their minds. Kira's household panicked. Guards scrambled in disarray. Half-dressed, many drunk or asleep servants screamed. Lanterns were lit too late. The Ronin moved like wolves, cutting down opposition with swift, precise strikes. They didn't kill indiscriminately. They shouted out that only Kira was their target. Anyone who didn't resist was spared. Oishi's eldest son, Chikara, only 16, fought beside his father. For all the talk of Bushido, this was no abstract ideal. This was blood steel, smoke in the lungs, swords slipping on icy tiles. It was loyalty carried out to the letter, with the price carved into flesh. The Ronin combed the mansion for Kira, but the man had vanished. They scoured every room, every hidden corner. They interrogated servants. Finally, they found a secret courtyard in a shed behind the garden. Trembling beneath a pile of charcoal and straw was a man in plain robes, his face pale, his body shaking. It was Kira. He refused to identify himself. He refused to speak, but he bore the scar Lord Asano had left on his face nearly 2 years earlier. Oishi offered him the chance to die with honor, A dagger was placed before him, seppuku like a true samurai, but Kira couldn't do it. He simply stared frozen. The man who had destroyed a clan without lifting a blade could not take responsibility when his time came. Oishi bowed. Once. Then he struck Kira. Yoshinaka died, not as a lord, but as a coward. The Ronin took his head, wrapped it in cloth, and marched calmly in full armor through the snow-covered streets of Edato. They carried the trophy to Sangaku-ji Temple, where Lord Asano was buried there. They cleaned the head, laid it before his grave, and prayed their revenge was complete, their fates sealed when morning broke. Edato awoke to the impossible word spread like wildfire. Kira Yoshinaka was dead slain in the heart of the city by 47 Ronin who had not fled, not hidden, but walked in formation to the temple where their lord lay buried. They made no effort to escape. They simply knelt, presented the severed head and waited. The city, usually loud with merchants and samurai clamor, fell strangely quiet. Some called them heroes, some called them criminals, but no one called them cowards. The authorities were now in a bind. The law was clear revenge killings were illegal. Samurai were not above justice, no matter how poetic their cause. But the public didn't see criminals. They saw men who had embodied Bushido to its bitter end. They had obeyed not the shogun's laws, but the deeper, older law of loyalty. The shogunate deliberated for weeks. This wasn't just about crime and punishment. It was about the soul of samurai culture. If the Ronin were spared, it would encourage more vendettas. If they were punished, the people might revolt in spirit. Meanwhile, the 47 men remained at Sangakuji. They did not resist. They did not beg. They sat in quiet reflection, tending to Lord Asano's grave and awaiting their fate. Aishi, the architect of it all, said nothing publicly. He had already said everything through his actions. Eventually, the decision came down. The Ronin would be allowed to die honorably. They would not be executed as criminals, but ordered to commit seppuku ritual suicide, like the samurai. They still claimed to be on the morning of February 4th, 1703. Each man was handed a dagger. They dressed in white robes, the color of purity and death. They bowed to the officials, to each other, and to the memory of Lord Asano, and then one by one, they cut into themselves, guided by a second, who would complete the ritual with a clean decapitation. Even Chikara Oishi's teenage son took the blade without hesitation. Not a single man faltered. They died not in disgrace, but in legend. Their bodies were buried beside their master at Sangaku-ji. The graves are still there, 47 stones in neat rows, covered in incense and offerings from pilgrims who still whisper their names, because in death they had achieved what life could not. They had become eternal. The tale of the 47. Ronin didn't fade. It echoed first through the streets of Edato, then into the halls of power, and finally into the soul of Japan. For centuries, samurai had been both warriors and servants, expected to kill without hesitation and die without complaint. But the 47 Ronin blurred the lines. They were criminals. Yes, but also paragons of loyalty. They broke the law, but followed the spirit of Bushido. To the letter, they disobeyed the shogun, but honored their lord in death more completely than most had in life. The paradox fascinated everyone. Was Bushido about obedience to the state or to one's master? Was justice defined by the law of man or the will of the warrior? Tokugawa officials tried to downplay the incident. They feared copycats. They feared chaos. But it was too late. The story had taken root, growing wild and impossible to contain. Within weeks, kabuki plays were being staged, thinly veiled retellings where the characters had different names, but the same story. The authorities banned them. New plays popped up anyway. People bought woodblock prints showing the Ronin mid-attack kneeling in seppuku, or marching solemnly with Kira's head. Even those who believed in strict obedience found themselves conflicted, because while the Ronin had acted outside the law, they had done so with dignity, with restraint. They didn't loot, they didn't gloat, they didn't run. They had waited, planned, struck, and then surrendered in that restraint. People saw something pure, something old. Aishi Kuronosuk became the archetype of the ideal retainer, calm, strategic, loyal to death. His son Chikara became the image of youthful devotion. The younger Ronin were remembered as noble souls who sacrificed futures they never got to live. And the story didn't just survive, it evolved over time. It became a national legend, celebrated in plays, novels, and eventually films. Every generation found something in the tale. Whether it was pride, sorrow, or a blueprint for courage, in a world where loyalty is often a word on paper, the Ronin had written theirs in blood and snow, and whether or not the shogunate approved, the people had decided these men were not traitors. They were the last true samurai. The 47 graves at Sangakuji Temple became more than memorials. They became a shrine not only to the men buried there, but to the very spirit of samurai. Honor, pilgrims came from across Japan, lighting incense, bowing low, and whispering prayers, not to gods, but to men. The temple itself became a quiet paradox in a city of noise and commerce. Sangakuji was still monks, tended the grounds with solemn care. Snow fell over the headstones each winter, just as it had the night Kira died each year on the anniversary of the attack, December 14th. By the lunar calendar, visitors gather to commemorate the deed. Lanterns flicker and incense hangs thick in the air. Some arrive in full samurai attire. Others come silently, leaving flowers or coins or notes of gratitude. Even those who didn't believe in vengeance found themselves drawn to the sight, because whatever your stance on law or ethics, you couldn't ignore the sacrifice, the discipline, the stillness of 47 men who gave up their futures for an idea older than the shogunate itself. For generations, the graves were treated with awe. School children were taken there to learn what loyalty meant. Soldiers visited before being sent to war. Writers, poets, and philosophers left lines scribbled in notebooks, trying to grasp the quiet power of what had happened. And while the world outside changed, Edo becoming Tokyo, Japan transforming from a feudal land into a modern state, the story didn't fade. Instead, it grew even during the Meiji Restoration, when samurai were abolished and the code of Bushido was folded into nationalism. The tale remained. It was repurposed. Yes, but never forgotten. Films were made. Plays were revived. Books were translated into languages. The Ronin had never heard tourists now visit Sangakuji alongside skyscrapers and vending machines. They take selfies as people do. But even so, most fall silent when they step before the stone of Oishi. Kuronosuk. There's something about it, something still, something exact here. Lies a man who waited a year to strike one blow and knew he would die for it. Here lies a man who chose loyalty over safety. And here, in this quiet corner of Tokyo, you can still feel the weight of that choice. Even after 3 centuries, the snow has not melted. As the centuries passed, the story of the 47 Ronin drifted from history into legend, and from legend into entertainment. What had begun as a real act of vengeance under the Tokugawa shogunate was now theater, quite literally. By the mid-18th century, the tale was immortalized as Chushingura, a kabuki and bunraku drama that altered names and dramatized events, but kept the soul intact. Loyalty, sacrifice, justice delayed, but not denied. Audiences wept, cheered, returned to see it again and again. The characters became archetypes: Aishi, the stoic genius; Kira, the arrogant villain; Chikara, the noble youth. Stage actors specialized in these roles, passing the performances from generation to generation like heirlooms. Some families played Oishi for decades. The scripts changed, but the meaning never did. When Japan opened to the West. In the 19th century, the 47 Ronin went global. Scholars translated the tale, admirers praised its moral weight. It was the kind of story Victorian Europe adored. Orderly, noble, tragic Hollywood naturally had its own ideas. Films were made, some reverent, others well less so. In 2013, a fantasy action movie starring Keanu Reeves reimagined the tale with witches, demons, and a half-English protagonist. It bombed in Japan. The people who still held candles at Sangaku didn't come for CGI. They came for something else, quiet, reverent, and real. Yet the fact that such a film was made at all speaks volumes. The story had reached the point where it could be distorted because it was universally recognized. Even if twisted, it could not be forgotten. In manga and anime, echoes of the Ronin show up in subtle ways. Stories of exiled warriors, lone swordsmen with impossible missions, ragtag bands of loyal followers defying corrupt power. The structure is familiar because at its core the tale is timeless. A group of men bound by oath facing death to preserve meaning in a crumbling moral world. Modern Japan has moved far beyond the age of katanas and lords. But the idea of loyalty surviving, even when the system has failed, still lingers. It surfaces in boardrooms, in classrooms, in pop songs and protest speeches, not always directly, but as a whisper. That real honor may be inconvenient, difficult, and even illegal, but it endures, and every time it does, the 47 Ronin rise again. 300 years later, the 47 Ronin still haven't left. Their names are etched not only on stone tablets at Sangakuji, but on the Japanese psyche. They aren't just historical figures. They're symbols, the kind you point to when everything else becomes murky, when law and justice no longer agree, when loyalty costs more than life. And that's what makes their story so enduring. It has no clean ending. Yes, they died, every one of them. But in death, they sparked a debate that has never fully cooled. Were they heroes or criminals? Was their loyalty noble or dangerously outdated? Did they elevate Bushido or prove it incompatible with law and order? The Tokugawa shogunate wanted to bury the conversation with them, but instead, their deaths ignited a slow burning fire under every institution that tried to define what it meant to be samurai. Even now, you'll find university professors arguing both sides. Some say the Ronin were glorified murderers clinging to a dying code. Others say they represented the very best of it, an incorruptible moral compass in an increasingly bureaucratic world. And the public still firmly in the second camp. In modern Japan, you'll find echoes of the Ronin everywhere. Corporate employees who refuse to betray a boss during scandal, even at the cost of their own careers. Soldiers who serve quietly and sacrifice without complaint. Even manga protagonists who stand alone, armed with nothing but principle. The Ronin are not relics, they're reference points. And in a time where loyalty is rare and truth is negotiable, their story feels strangely modern. Oishi Kuranosuke never wrote a memoir. He didn't leave behind a treatise on ethics, but he left behind a question sharpened like a blade. What do you serve, and what are you willing to pay for it? The 47 Ronin answered that question, not with words, not with slogans, but with time silence, and finally, their lives. They obeyed a dead man. They broke the law to keep a promise, and in doing so, they became more than samurai. They became a mirror, one that every generation must look into and ask itself, would I have followed, and would I have had the courage to stop in ancient Egypt? To harm a cat was to flirt with disaster, not just social shame, but legal punishment, and sometimes mob justice. That's how serious it was. Cats weren't pets. In the modern sense, they were holy, untouchable, and in some cases mourned more deeply than relatives. When a family cat died, Egyptians would shave their eyebrows in grief, not out of fashion, but ritual cats weren't just companions, they were guardians of the divine. This reverence was rooted in religion. The goddess Bastet, daughter of Ra, was the feline deity of home fertility, music, and protection. She began as a lioness, fierce and destructive, but over time, she softened into a cat retaining power, but gaining grace. Her temples were filled with offerings, jewelry, perfumes, and most importantly, cats. Real ones, living, breathing cats who roamed freely, fed by priests, and were considered manifestations of the goddess herself. Archaeologists have uncovered vast cat cemeteries near Bastet's main temple in Bubastic. Mummified cats, wrapped with the same care as human corpses, lay in neat rows. Some were buried with jewelry, others were preserved with resins and perfumes. This wasn't a novelty, it was an industry. Cats were bred for sacred purposes, blessed and sometimes ritually sacrificed, so they could serve in the afterlife. The symbolism ran deep. Cats hunted snakes, the eternal enemy of Ra, the sun god. A cat killing a snake wasn't just pest control, it was cosmic warfare. Cats lounged in sunlight, patrolled granaries, and bore that aloof, unreadable look that seemed otherworldly. Egyptians saw that and didn't think lazy pet. They thought divine mystery. Foreigners were baffled. Greek historians like Herodotus were amazed, and perhaps slightly amused by how quickly Egyptian wrath could be triggered if a cat was even accidentally harmed during one battle. It said the Persians carried cats as living shields, knowing the Egyptians would hesitate to strike to the modern eye. It may seem excessive, but to the Egyptians, animals weren't beneath humans. They were closer to the gods. Cats, in their grace and independence, stood at the intersection of beauty and the sacred, not just pets. Portals on the island of Crete, surrounded by the rolling blue of the Aegean Sea. The bull reigned not in pastures, but in palaces. The Minoans, one of Europe's earliest advanced civilizations, didn't just admire bulls, they ritualized them. They built myths around them. They painted them on walls like gods. Step into the grand palace of Cossus, and you'll find fresco, that pulse with energy, leaping bulls, acrobats vaulting over horns, scenes alive with rhythm and movement. This was more than sport. This was sacred spectacle. It was called bull leaping, a ritual dance, a death-daying act of agility and respect. Both men and women took part not to kill the bull, but to interact with it, to bridge the space between human and divine. Because for the Minoans, the bull wasn't just an animal, it was a cosmic force. The symbolism likely ran deep into their mythology. The legendary Minotaur, half-man, half-bull, was said to live in a labyrinth beneath Konos. Was it myth? Maybe. But myths are often echoes of deeper truths. Perhaps the Minor was a memory of ritual power of humans merging with beasts in sacred spaces. The bull also connected to the sky. Its horns mirrored the crescent moon, its roar like thunder. Its body, immense and muscular, seemed too powerful to belong to mere flesh. In a time when people read the world through symbols, the bull was a message, strength, fertility. Motion sacrifices were likely part of this reverence, though the Minoans were less bloodthirsty than later Greek cultures. Some bulls were killed ritually, yes, but others were honored in life. They were paraded, painted, and praised. The power of the bull wasn't always in its death, it was in its presence. And unlike the Roman arena where bulls died for entertainment, Minoan rituals seemed to emphasize harmony, a dangerous, respectful dance between human and beast. The point wasn't to dominate, but to touch something beyond the bull. Was not a symbol of chaos. It was a gatekeeper of cosmic order in Minoan Cree. To face a bull wasn't just bravery. It was spiritual contact, a momentary balance between flesh and myth. In the dense jungles of Mesoamerica, beneath the tangled canopy and echoing bird calls, one creature ruled not by size, but by mystery. The jaguar to the Mer, the Olm and the Aztecs. This spotted predator wasn't just an animal. It was a god in disguise, a shapeshifter, a traveler. Between worlds, the jaguar hunted by night, moving silently through shadows with eyes that pierced darkness that alone made it sacred in a world where night represented the underworld and the unknown. Any creature that could move through it with ease was a guide, a messenger or a ruler theme. The earliest known Mesoamerican civilization carved colossal stone heads that some believe bear feline features. Wide noses, curved lips, fierce eyes. Their art also shows the were-jaguar figure part. Human part, jaguar, often with fangs and snarling mouths. Scholars still debate its meaning. But one thing is certain. Theme didn't just fear the jaguar. They wanted to become. Yet the Maya took this further. Their kings often associated themselves with jaguars wearing pelts, helmets, and glyphs that linked their power to the beast. The underworld called Xibalba was a place of trials and darkness, and the jaguar was the creature that walked its halls freely. Some Maya gods, like the powerful jaguar god of the underworld, embodied the duality of night and death, feared but necessary. And then came the Aztecs, whose elite warriors were known as the Jaguar Knights. These weren't just soldiers. They were sacred fighters chosen to channel the jaguar's ferocity, dressed in full jaguar pelts, complete with snarling masks and claws. They didn't just fight like jaguars. They believed they were jaguars. Battle wasn't just about conquest. It was a ritual reenactment of cosmic struggle sacrifice. As grim as it sounds to modern ears, central jaguars were sometimes sacrificed to the gods. Not out of cruelty, but reverence to kill. A jaguar meant releasing a sacred force to offer its heart, was to give the gods something they recognized as kin to the Mesoamerican mind. The jaguar wasn't merely a big cat. It was a portal between life and death, day and night, man and God. A predator? Yes, but also a priest in fur in the temples and forests of ancient India. The elephant was more than a majestic animal. It was a living divinity carved in flesh and muscle. No creature loomed larger in both size and symbolism to ancient Indians. Elephants embodied strength, wisdom, memory, royalty, and the sacred rhythm of the universe itself. They weren't just warped, they were woven into myth. At the center of this reverence stands Ganesha, the elephant-headed god with a belly full of sweets, a broken tusk, and an eternally calm smile. Ganesha is beloved across all corners of Indian life. He is the remover of obstacles, the patron of new beginnings, the god one prays to before weddings, travels, or building a house. But behind his gentle appearance is a powerful origin. According to one legend, Ganesha was created by the goddess Parvati to guard her privacy. When the god Shiva tried to enter her chamber, Ganesha blocked him, unaware that this was Parvat's husband. In fury, Shiva beheaded the boy. When Parvati discovered what had happened, her grief shook heaven and earth. To make amends, Shiva promised to restore the boy's life using the head of the first creature. He found an elephant, and so Ganesha was reborn, part human, part elephant, and wholly divine. But the veneration of elephants goes beyond myth. In historical India, real elephants served as symbols of kingship. They were the thrones of war, armored, decorated, and revered by those who rode and feared them. An army with elephants was not just powerful. It was blessed temples, often kept elephants as part of their rituals in the southern state of Kerala. Sacred elephants are still paraded in annual festivals adorned with golden headpieces and painted tusks. Devotees bow as they pass, not out of fear, but reverence. These elephants are seen as earthly forms of divine power, slow-moving gods that walk among mortals in Vedic literature. The elephant is associated with rain and fertility, especially the cosmic elephant, Airata, the Mount of Indra. King of the gods, Airata was said to be born from the churning of the ocean white, as a cloud with multiple heads trumpeting storms into being. To ancient India, the elephant was not merely an animal. It was thunder-made flesh, wisdom on 4 legs, and the quiet strength of eternity. To most ancient peoples, the serpent was never just a snake. It was a symbol of power, rebirth, danger knowledge, and the divine. And depending on where you stood in the ancient world, it could either be your sacred protector or the mouth of chaos in ancient Mesopotamia. The serpent played both roles. The god Ningishita, depicted with serpents emerging from his shoulders, was a deity of the underworld and vegetation. He was both guardian and gatekeeper, a being that slithered between the world of the living and the dead. The Sumerians didn't hate serpents,